there's something in each and every single one of us that is sort of like an uh, untapped as in we are not even, it's just always there. And untouched as in like it has never been like really changed or shaped by life. It's just always in us. And that's like the universal essence that we all are. That irreducible force is always within us. And and it's interesting because even as we suffer in life, every moment that we suffer, right? Every moment that we're sort of suffering in our mind, from as early as we can remember, right? There's an opposite struggle, right? To transcend that suffering, and that has been occurring, and that occurs every single moment that we're alive. It's almost like that universal essence that we are all are within us, that is completely untouched by life, like that is that oneness. And it's almost like that force, that like pure beyond pure, just what is. It's almost like that isness is sort of, you know as we struggle through life, it's almost like that is like sort of swallowing the suffering all the time. And if we think about it scientifically, right, the suffering or fear is just energy, right? And that energy just sort of needs to be neutralized, needs to come back down again, right? And so this business really is like the ultimate neutrality, right? Like it is just what is, and so everything sort of just dies back down to this. Um, and that's quite a fascinating thing to contemplate, because it's almost like we are we are the human self, right? We are the human self that suffers, and then um, we are also the isness. We are also like the untouchable, force that is like the essence of the universe. And so it's quite beautiful that this play is always happening, and this is why this is what they refer to when they speak of, like, there is the human self, and then there is the God self, right? And both of them are trying to merge in this lifetime, and both of them are just sort of like dancing their own dance, and playing out, um, and maybe not the isness, right? Maybe the isness isn't playing itself out. Technically it is, right? Because it's playing itself out as the human self, but the God self in us is always embracing the human self, right? And the human self is always striving towards being the God self. And so it's amazing that both of those things exist in the same body. And until you have the revelation of the God self in you, the universal force, the essence of all life and creation, you don't even know either, right? Because you just assume, without even thinking, that you are this person that you experience up here in your brain, in your head, because you're identified with the thoughts that you have. And so when you have the experience of that which you are in this body truly, then it becomes clear, or clearer after some period of time, that there are perhaps two selves in here. There's a God self and there's a human self, and that's ultimately the play that we only have to go through to then merge the human self with the God self, because truly, in truth, we know that there's just one. But it's interesting because in our experience, in our human experience, there seems to be a human self as well. And so this paradox is something that you know is perhaps unsolvable and unanswerable, um, But just even thinking about it as like, it's from the one that everything manifests, and we are this, but we are this, but we are this too, or we are this, but we are this too, and everything is completely equal um, at the end of the day. Like there is no fault in being a human self, and you experience that in your healing when you heal your human self, when you heal a lot of those traumas and pains and all of the suffering that you've experienced in your life, down to like the really the momentary thoughts, the momentary pains, millions of those. And so you really and a lot of that healing comes through just the understanding of the mechanism of the ego, right, that develops and is the root of like the human self, right? Just a fear that develops in the way that we were alone, that we were supposed to maybe not be alone, and we didn't get the support that we needed. And so fear turns into a separate self, literally a separate identity that then plays in our head 24/7 and sort of deludes us, and we're caught in that world, we're caught in that illusion. And so once you sort of heal the ego, you find yourself coming more and more out of this illusion, and you realize you understand so well, right, how the ego operates. And it's truly an understanding that we develop compassion, right? And then even beyond that, right, it just, the entire construct sort of just completely like merges into the divine, right, into the universal, essence, force. And so when it's sort of like all of it just disappears when you heal it. But again, I mean, it disappears from your observable, visible thought, but the understanding is integrated into your being. And so that's what's so fascinating about sort of healing, is that an awakening is that you go through this process of shedding, looking, reflecting, and healing, and then and ultimately all of that just becomes all of that just disappears ultimately. Like this whole questioning, seeking, clarifying, everything that was going on in your mind before sort of it it dies down, and completely just merges into presence. And then you are sort of returned to a sort of normalcy, like maybe what you experienced as a child, or what you've experienced before, just in moments where you were washing the dishes or driving the car or driving the kids to practice or making your bed. Moments where you just got lost, as in like you weren't thinking. And you didn't, like, it's almost like you didn't have any track of time. It was just like you were there, but your mind wasn't. And so we're all seeking relief from our mind, from our ego that has that has developed into a separate self that now causes us like suffering because it's playing here all the time. And when it's pleasurable, right, because the ego it alternates between highs and lows all the time. And the highs are like, I feel really good about myself, something is really pleasurable. And the lows, of course, are the opposite, right? And so it works together. And so when we experience like the pleasurable thoughts, we enjoy those. But it's really when we experience the negative thoughts, the thoughts of suffering that really, really plague us, and that really, really make it even difficult, to survive in the moment. For many of us who have experienced this, right, the mind is has a very strong energy at times, and it makes it very, very difficult just to even tolerate and bear in the moment. And in this journey of awakening and healing, what you'll find is that you will learn to bear it, right? You will learn to tolerate it. And the difference is when you heal, right? You're doing it through the heart. And so far in your life, maybe you've been doing it through through, another part of the mind that was like intellectualizing or rationalizing, or even the same part of the mind, which is, could have been, the ego, right? The very same ego that was like sort of learning about itself, but it was kind of growing and evolving on its own journey. But you never really took care of the root of the entire ego, the root of the entire, that separate self, that entire construct. And so healing, awakening, is really taking care of the root of it, which which is just fear. And you experience that over and over and over again, a million times in your body, in the process of ego dissolution or ego death. However we refer to, like, sort of like the merging of the ego. And it's definitely one of the most difficult. It is the most difficult transition that we make as a human being. Because it's fear that's leaving your body. And fear is like is there because it's protecting you. Psychologically, it's protecting you from either life or death, right? It is sort of gripped onto this way that's protecting you from, it's your own way of dying, right? And so if that's, pleasing or achieving, it's sort of however you needed to survive as a child, right? That's really how it begins. And then that sort of fear just, accumulates throughout your entire lifetime. So you've got quite a bit to work through. But just the root of fear, like when you experience the fear and how great it is, it's just it's formidable, in the body. And it's no wonder we have all these coping mechanisms. And even coping, like, not just externally but coping mechanisms internally, right? Like the mind resorts to, any kind of, mental manifestation, any kind of, mental condition, right? ADHD, OCD, depression, anxiety. These are just the mind that's trying to cope with hard times, right? With difficult times in our life. This is how it's trying to deal with those things, right? It's just trying to cope. And the way to actually truly deal, right, with the difficult time or the difficult experience that you're experiencing, right, that you're going through currently in life or whenever, right, is to really is to be with that experience that you're having, right? To be with the difficulty of that, to really be present with your inner experiences and the thoughts and and the feelings and the sensations in the body. And this process is, I mean, it isn't easy, but we've been so deviated from this, starting from when we were kids, and we really had to suppress how we feel, right? We had to suppress a lot of our emotions in order to survive in our household. And so it's absolutely, for many of us, it's tremendously difficult, right, to do this. And that's why this process is a slow one. It's a gradual one, right? It's like we allow our nervous system, right, to sort of go through phases of however much it can hold, however safe it feels to feel, and to sort of awaken to the ways in which it shut itself off, in order to survive as well. And so this process is definitely, it's extremely sacred, because your body is waking up to the ways in which it has sort of been dormant in an effort to just protect you. And when you see that, like you experience that, there's a real remarkableness about that. Like my body actually, it's stopped sending me sort of alarm signals, or I stopped feeling things, or I stopped, the body's really remarkable like that. Like it's one job, right? Our brain's one job, right, which controls our entire body, is really just to survive. It's to survive. And so, of course, the job that it has to do is protect us. And so however we perceive fear, right, however we uniquely sort of grasp onto, like, fear in our individual lives and journeys, that's how it's going to continue to protect us our whole life, right, until we do the work of really seeing that fear. And so, awakening, healing, these things are so sacred because what it is actually like a return to return to being in your heart, return to being in your body, right? It's overcoming the fear, but not really even overcoming it like that. It's actually healing it from the root. And maybe up until this point, you've done a lot of overcoming, right? You've done a lot of like conquering, or even transcending, right? But the true definition of transcendence, right, is to move beyond something, the totality of something, right? So not even to be in that same lane or world anymore, right? Um, it's to actually have the entire world disappear, have the entire construct just be completely swallowed and um, like merged into your being. And so, when we heal and when we really take care of things like from the root, it's almost like there can be a point where it almost feels in your experience that you actually didn't even have this construct before, like that you weren't the same person before because you've moved so far past beyond it. And perhaps there are different ways, that people do heal, as in, not intentionally, like, sitting with the sacred, the sacred sitting of like the fear, and really looking and feeling like the root of these thoughts and stories and pains and sufferings in our life. And that other way could be just, it could be movement, right? Because ultimately it is energy. um, but sometimes, for some reason or another, some of us, we go through this underworld, and we do the sacred sitting, and the looking, and the reflecting, and the understanding, and we actually understand the mechanism from which fear, manifests, in the mind. We understand that mechanism. We understand how fear does that, right? Because we work through our own fear. We work through our own, suffering. And so, maybe it's perhaps, it's those of us who undertake the underworld, right? That we develop, this understanding from our own experience, and then we're able to help and teach and guide others who are on the same journey. And so I guess, it's interesting. There's so many paths to the one, right? There's so many paths home, and there always will be. Um, and everyone perhaps is on their own unique path, right? And then also gravitating to others who are on the similar path of either movement, or who are trying to, who are healing or transcending their suffering in a specific way, right? In that categorical way. Um, and so, I guess, the journey, that if you resonate with this video that I'm recording right now, you resonate with journeying into the underworld, journeying into sort of the depths of the human mind, into the depths of the ego, and really, like, the mechanism, understanding the mechanism of how fear sort of develops and then manifests into what we experience as, mental manifestations, even just thought, right? And so, like, mental conditions are, right, they're composed of thought. But even just understanding, like, the basic, like, the simplicity of how fear, gives birth to thought, even that alone, like, like, we experience that. Like, if you're on this journey, you've probably experienced that. And so you understand, okay, if fear, right, gives birth to thought, right, of course, like, thought is responsible for all of, mental manifestations. That is like the root of, that's, there is no, all mental conditions are composed of thought, right? Perhaps, at least, right, in situations like depression or anxiety, it perhaps is true that there's still identification with thought, right? um, Even if there are symptoms in the body. And so it's quite fascinating to explore this. Um, but for some reason or another, those of us that sort of, do this work, this inner work, and delve, right, sit, um, we are meant to sort of, you know, be the light of this in the world as well. And maybe it is possible that, you know, people who are overcoming their suffering or transcending their suffering, they are also lights in the world in their own way. But it's um, I wonder what the because I've met a lot of people that have healed on an emotional level, right? And I think it would make sense, and it makes sense to me that when we do this work emotionally, of course, when we heal the darkness, then we're able, like the depth of healing that darkness is really is reflected in then the joy and the presence of our light, and maybe there is something to that. Maybe people who do undertake this, you know, this journey of like inner work, maybe it does show, right? Maybe they radiate. Maybe their eyes beam and their eyes twinkle, and there's a depth in their eyes. It's quite possible because it would make sense. Um, and maybe there is like a richer inner experience of life, right? Because you have like sort of sifted through, all of this pain and suffering. And just begs the question, like if somebody else who is overcoming, transcending suffering in their own way, and let's say like their way of doing that is movement, right? They're, let's say, a great runner, and maybe they even make it to the Olympics, and um, or even not, if they're just somebody who uses running, runs every day or all the time, or and has an intention practice to even move this energy out of their body through running or through their choice of movement. um, is it possible that having cleared this energy out, that they too beam and radiate with light? And I would like to think so. I would like to think that the answer is yes. Because well, we meet so many people in the world that are have transcended so much in their life, and the example that just comes to mind is just is Shark Tank, and the sharks that are a part of Shark Tank, and sort of like their presence and their glow, and I think there's something to that as well. And it just makes sense, right? Because there are so many paths, there are so many roads home, right? And I think every person is on a road home, is on their own unique road home. I just wonder, those of us that are, that do the work of sort of the emotional work, right? And just sit, right? I wonder what the and if there is a difference there. Let me know what you think. I'm interested.